Welcome to the Church of Thomas. Free Will, 11/25/07. There's been a discussion of free will versus predestiny since philosophy began. There are many things, of course, that can influence the choices we make. We make these decisions based on whether it will be good for us personally. For example, it may keep us out of danger. It might bring us resources like food, shelter, money, a relationship, or status. There is a school of thought that argues that the choices we make are based on the genetics we carry from conception. Half the influence from our mother and half from our father. The other side of the argument is that we make choices based on how we were brought up. This discussion is called nature versus nurture. To raise a moral person, we have to lead by example. A good, supportive, loving home life makes for good people would be the conclusion of this way of thinking. We make allowances for people coming from homes that are abusive and lacking in the basic needs of a child. This child would, of course, grow up to be shortchanged in the judgment department. They would not know any better. If we go with nature versus nurture, we could say, my family has a lot of hotheads, so I'm like them too. Or, I had a hard childhood. The ideal of nature versus nurture has bearing on how we behave as well as the choices we make. But there is a missing ingredient. The court defense of, it's not my fault, has been used a great deal lately in court cases to explain why someone would do something horrible. We could also dismiss great acts of altruism because of this. If we were destined to save the family of so-and-so from a burning house, how could we give credit to that hero? We're just following a program that ordained the act of valor. On the other hand, some Christian theology, there is an argument about free will versus God's omniscience. The doctrine of divine foreknowledge seems to be in conflict with free will. It simply states that if God knows exactly what will happen, there can be no such thing as free will. If God knows our choices, every choice that we make, how can we influence the outcome of our choices? How can we sin if it is ordained by God's knowledge that we will be a mass murderer at such and such an age? How can we hold this person accountable for their crimes if it is going to happen no matter how they might not want it to do the deed? They had to do it because it was ordained by God. In this idea of God setting our paths, there is no flexibility for doing more than our programming. This is called determinism in philosophy. In this way of looking at our lives and our choices, there can be no free will. If we are set on a path with no free will, we can't sin. We would be meat machines who followed our set courses from birth to death. Martin Luther, the founder of the branch of Christianity called Protestant, was a determinist. He was convinced that people were totally depraved, destitute of free will. Because of original sin, he thought that all works were nothing more than an outgrowth of a person's corrupt will. As a result, they would be judged by God to be, in reality, mortal sins. Luther's doctrine meant that people could be saved only by faith. He believed that our faith in Jesus as the Christ made Jesus' righteousness our own. It is only through this faith that we are enveloped in the garb of righteousness that covers our guilt and sinfulness. This righteousness offsets any defects in our characters. Jewish tradition says that free will is a product of the basic human soul. They use the word neshama. The root word for this is N-S-H-M, or, and I can't say this because it's in Hebrew, which means breath. This refers to the breath of God giving us our souls. The ability to make a free will choice is yeshida. This is the part of the soul that is united with God. Since God is the only being that is not hindered by or dependent on cause and effect, we can share the ability to have free will too. Since freedom of will does not belong in the realm of physical reality, it It is understandable that free will can transcend our life limitations. The way we were brought up does not mandate the kind of person we become. There are many people who are raised in drug and alcohol abusing homes. They may be more at risk, but most do not follow the same path. There are many who are abused that still become loving partners and parents. There are many people who are born in abject poverty that still rise above their circumstances. If they do not forget the hardships, they might even be the person who sets up an outreach. Maybe because the outreach, some next generation of kids can look a bit higher because they now have a positive role model. Striving to be better is often the motivator. A parent may work 3 jobs because they want something better for their children. Jumping into the unknown of leaving an abusive relationship because you do not want your kids to be abusers. These are leaps of faith. There was recently a story of a hero. He ran into a burning building of strangers. After going in several times, he collapsed with smoke inhalation. He had rescued several kids and their mom. The news reporters showed up to document the fire. They were overjoyed with the idea of a hero was involved. They talked with him for many minutes about what he did. When they asked him why he did it, he just said it was the right thing to do. When the human interest story hit the wires, it was aired all over the USA. Unfortunately, someone recognized him. You see, he was wanted on an arrest warrant. He risked his freedom to do the right thing. He risked far more than his life when he saved that family. He used free will to rise above his former crime. I never heard if he was convicted again. I never heard if the circumstances of his arrest were taken into account. In my heart, I hope so. In the Church of Thomas, we believe there is a mixture of both free will and predestiny. In a way, it offers the best of both ways of thinking. We believe that God knows what will come next. We also believe that people can and should be held accountable for their actions. We understand that a poor upbringing can warp a child's sense of right and wrong. We also understand that there are some things that are powerful influences that can come from our genetics. Allowances can be made for these influences. However, they do not absolve them from wrongdoing. Being firm about compassionate answers the needs of both of these influences. The way we see it is that our lives are like a great big coloring book. All the outlines are the predestiny part are drawn by God. We color in the pictures with our choices by free will as we live each page. By knowing what God wants from us, we are better able to color inside the lines. There is a great deal of creativity and variety that can be used to color our pages. None of them are wrong. The object is to color inside of God's lines the best we can to make it a good picture. As we color, we get better at figuring out what works best. Happy coloring. God bless the whole world, no exceptions.